Radio Ritorno Futuro. Spettacoli.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're getting into a case that is so foundational to American horror, it keeps getting rebooted.
It really does.
We're talking about Ed Gein, the Butcher of Plainfield. And the reason we're doing this deep dive now is that new Netflix series, Monster, the Ed Gein story.
It's the perfect reason, really, because when you look at all the source material, the police reports, the psych evaluations, the cultural critiques, you realize you're not just looking at a criminal.
Yeah.
You're analyzing the very blueprint for the modern horror monster.
So we've got everything assembled. We have the historical facts on Gein, which are just horrifying. We have the inventory from his farmhouse.
Chilling.
And, of course, the immediate and, frankly, scathing reviews of this new 8-episode season. It dropped October 3, 2025, with Charlie Hunnam as Gein.
Okay, so our mission for you today is sort of twofold. First, we need to lay out the factual history, the devastating reality of Gein's crimes, what actually drove him to madness. And second, we have to look at how this Netflix series, it's the third in the Monster anthology, tried to do this really ambitious meta-commentary thing on true crime itself.
And why so many critics say it was just a spectacular overstuffed failure, full of historical liberties.
Exactly.
It's a huge jump going from, factual depravity straight into meta-critique. So let's start at the source. The man, Ed Gein, born 1906, La Crosse, Wisconsin.
His whole upbringing, it really was like something out of a horror script. Just total isolation on that rural farm.
It sounds like a completely closed, toxic system.
It was. You had his older brother, an alcoholic father who was, barely there, and his mother, Augusta.
And she was everything.
She was the absolute center of his universe. I mean, the source of all his profound psychological damage.
The sources are so clear on that. Augusta's influence was the engine for everything that came later. What about their relationship really stands out?
Well, she was fanatically religious, violently so even.
Yeah.
She basically taught him that all other women were, quote, vicious creatures.
So he was just drilled day in and day out that the entire world was sin and deviation.
And she was the only source of purity, the only authority. It created this paralyzing codependence.
But that couldn't last forever.
Mm-hmm.
His father and brother died between 1940 and 45, and then Augusta had 2 strokes and passed away. What happened again when she was gone?
That's when it all collapsed. The sources are pretty direct here. They say his desperation and solitude turned into folly and horror.
It wasn't a slow drift.
No, it was a complete psychological break. He was later diagnosed with schizophrenia. That isolation is just so crucial because the void that Augusta left, that was the hole he tried to fill with his crimes.
Which brings us to the crimes themselves, the ones that got him caught in 1957. Now, he's famous for a lot of gruesome stuff, but let's stick to the confirmed victims.
Right. There were 2 confirmed murders. First was Mary Hogan back in 1951.
Okay.
The second, and this is the one that led to his arrest, was the local hardware store owner, Bernice Warden. She was 58. That was November 1957.
And the discovery of her body. That's the moment the man really becomes the myth, isn't it?
Precisely. Because her body was found in a shed on his property, decapitated, displayed, the reports say, like a hunting trophy. And it was the shock of that, the specific violation, that just cemented his name in the public's mind forever. He was found guilty, but, mentally unfit, so he was institutionalized for the rest of his life. Died in 84.
That discovery, that trophy,
Yeah.
it leads us right into the farmhouse, the infamous House of Horrors. Because it became clear pretty quickly this wasn't just about 2 murders.
Not at all. It was about years of grave robbing.
Why do you think that specific detail, the grave robbing, became such a huge part of his story?
Because it speaks directly to the psychology. I mean, Gein confessed to digging up 9 women between 1947 and 1952.
And the sources say he targeted a specific type, right?
Yes. Middle-aged women, recently buried, who physically reminded him of his mother. It wasn't theft. It was a psychotic kind of acquisition, a preservation attempt.
So let's talk about the so-called artifacts. The inventory, it's so grotesque, the shock value can almost overwhelm the meaning. So instead of just a list, what's the pattern? What was he doing with these remains?
He was transforming death into home decor and clothing.
That's one way to put it.
I mean, literally. We're talking skull bowls, belts made from human nipples, femurs used as table legs.
Unbelievable. He wasn't collecting things, he was furnishing.
And creating a wardrobe. And the most disturbing piece, by far, was the woman suit.
Right.
He admitted he had sewn together the skin from the legs and torso of a woman, a full bodysuit, and he said he wore it to change sex.
To become his mother.
The only woman he ever revered.
That desire to embody her, that's the core of the whole tragedy. Before we move on, there's that one last weird detail from his confession, the meat mystery.
Oh, yeah. It's such a chilling little footnote. During his interviews, he admitted he'd never successfully killed a deer in his life.
Which would be fine, except...
Except he had been giving his neighbors cuts of what he called deer meat for years.
Okay, so here's the turn. This is where fact becomes cultural mythology. He only had 2 confirmed murders, but he becomes the first real celebrity serial killer. Why him? What was it about his brand of horror?
I think it's because America had never really confronted this specific psychological framework before. The mother obsession, the isolation, and turning human remains into crafts.
Hollywood saw the potential immediately.
Oh, absolutely. He basically became the hidden matrix for all modern horror.
It's incredible when you list them out, the iconic monsters he inspired.
He's the foundational pillar. You start with Norman Bates in Psycho in 1960.
The mother obsession.
Then you get Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Wearing a mask of human skin.
And of course, you can't forget Buffalo Bill.
Silence of the Lambs, creating a woman's suit, it all comes back to Gein.
Every time.
So let's talk about the Netflix series. They clearly understood this legacy, and they tried to weave it right into the story by including figures like Alfred Hitchcock. They made it meta.
That was their whole game plan. They wanted to connect Gein's reality directly to his cinematic myth. So you see Hitchcock working on Psycho, you see the cultural shock of the shower scene.
They even had subplots about the actor, Anthony Perkins, and his own struggles.
Yeah, trying to imply that this kind of hidden sickness was everywhere.
But that meta approach required them to invent a lot. And that's where the critics really came for them.
This is where the adaptation just completely goes off the rails, according to the reviews. The show fabricated some huge elements to, explore the roots of evil.
Like what?
Well, for one, a fictional girlfriend, Adeline Watkins.
He had a girlfriend in the show?
He did. And she's the one who introduces him to Nazi war crimes, which leads him to become obsessed with Ilse Koch, the bitch of Buchenwald.
And the show depicts him actually talking to her.
Yes. On a ham radio, she's encouraging him, a choice that critics just called pure sensationalism.
Wow.
They also leaned really heavily into his sexual identity confusion. They created scenes where he's in contact with Christine Jorgensen.
The pioneering transgender woman from the 50s.
Exactly. And Gein is shown questioning if he's transsexual himself.
So they introduce these wildly controversial fictional threads, but then they try to explain them away.
That's the thing. The show tries to have it both ways. Later, it reveals that these conversations with Koch and Jorgensen, they were just hallucinations from his schizophrenia.
Oh, come on.
And the show even has the fictional Jorgensen character tell him his desire to cross-dress wasn't about gender identity, but about extremely eroticized misogyny. It's an attempt at nuance that it lands as a total mess.
But the biggest historical distortion,
yes.
that was the ending, right? This attempt at some kind of redemption.
The finale was, I think one critic called it a heinous effort to fictitiously rehabilitate him.
What did they do?
It shows Gein, decades later in the institution, helping the FBI profilers, the Mindhunter guys, Ressler and Douglas.
No.
Yes. In this version, Gein analyzes Ted Bundy's profile and writes a letter that helps them catch Bundy.
That is a massive invention, just trading history for a dramatic ending. And yet the show claimed it was trying to critique the audience.
It did. You have moments where Gein breaks the fourth wall, looks at the camera, and says stuff like, "It's you who can't look away."
Wow.
The intent was to critique our obsession with this stuff, but the critics all agreed it failed spectacularly. It just fell right into the trap it was supposedly criticizing.
Look at the numbers. The reviews were just awful. What was it, 22% on Rotten Tomatoes?
It's small. The consensus was overstuffed mess, wasted production value, totally unfocused. The main complaint was just the excessive graphic violence and grotesque shock value.
I remember one review mentioning the recreation of the Psycho shower scene. Why did they feel the need to redo that moment, but make it gratuitously adult only?
And that really gets to the show's biggest flaw. The narrative was just chaotic. The Nazi stuff, the trans plot line, the Bundy link, it all distracted from the actual core horror story.
The mother and son.
Right. So instead of dissecting the monster, the show just ended up indulging in the myth. Spectacle over substance.
And beyond the themes, there were specific inaccuracies that reviewers really flagged.
Yes. Besides the totally fake FBI ending, Critics pointed to an unsubstantiated sexual encounter between Gein and Bernice Worden. And there was a lot of pushback against the portrayal of Gein as a crossdresser, which many sources say isn't really supported by evidence and just perpetuates harmful stereotypes.
So we end up at this central paradox, the failure of the show.
The show ultimately reflected not just the perversion of one man, but also our own audience obsession with the macabre. It tried to hold up a mirror, but it just ended up providing another feast for the eyes.
Which brings us to our synthesis.
Yeah.
The true lasting horror of Ed Gein isn't really about the number of murders. It's about that profound psychological collapse and the desecration of the human body that followed.
He permanently scarred the public imagination. He turned crime into this macabre domestic art. And in doing so, he gave us the archetypes for almost all modern horror.
So the key takeaway here is that the Netflix series tried to use this foundational story to critique our consumption of true crime. But the spectacle it created was so big and so full of distortion
that it became a victim of the very thing it was trying to condemn. It's really hard to critique a spectacle when you're busy making an even bigger one.
A spectacular failure of meta-commentary. So let's end on a final provocative thought.
Yeah.
It goes back to Gein himself. We know from the sources that after everyone died, only his mother's room was left intact and clean as a sanctuary.
While the rest of the house was just filthy.
Right. And he imagined a peaceful reunion with her when he died. So what does that one chilling detail tell you about the role of sanctification? Of keeping one thing pure even in madness? Does the act of preserving something, a memory or a room, sometimes drive the ultimate destruction of everything else? Think about that desire for sanctuary the next time you encounter a monster story.
Radio Ritorno Futuro. Spettacoli.